Welcome to Season 2 of Common Time Podcast. I'm David Clemmer.
And I'm John Pasquale.
And we're back to inspire and empower music educators with practical advice, thought-provoking conversations, and stories from some of the best in the business. Let's dive into another incredible episode. Our guest today is Melodianne Mallow. Melodianne taught for 29 years in Birdville ISD, Mesquite ISD, and Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD in Texas, and continues to serve as a full-time consultant and clinician and mentor to countless band directors in the area. And I am excited because today we're talking about routines and systems for successful middle school bands. And I don't think there is probably a better person on the planet to go through this with us. So welcome, Melodianne. It's great to see you.
Thank you. It's great to be with you, esteemed guys, with your doctors.
Absolutely. John, why don't you get us started?
Indeed. Hi,
John.
Melodianne. I am so honored to be talking to you today. And for our listeners, I have to say that Melodianne Mallow is one of the best teachers that I've ever seen on any continent teach band.
Thankful for my mentors. So
when I was student teaching in the school district where she taught, I would go to her rehearsal and just sit back and go, how on earth do these students sound so good? And the process was so smooth and predictable and efficient, and I just want to bottle it and sell it. So that's kind of what we're doing today, is taking all of your knowledge and going to kind of bottle it and share it across the world. So we appreciate your time. So I've got a question. I'm just going to get it started. So what does a typical day look like in the ideal band room? Okay. And this could be middle school or high school, or however you want to conceptualize it. Okay. And then how do routines play a role in its success?
Okay. So since most all of my being is middle school world, from beginners up, and I was fortunate to teach beginners through 12th grade. And actually my first 5 years were in Eagle Mountain, Saginaw. So I did guard and high school. So that was fine when I was young. And then no more. That was good. But with our beginners, and I think with anyone that teaches beginners, you know that from day one, you're establishing routine for their seniors in high school. What you do affects what the high school does. What you do in the beginner classes affects what you do the next year. I did learn that from my father early on, him being the only director and teaching all his beginners in the same room. And I would watch him go up and draw a clarinet embouchure in the board and go, that's pretty cool. Didn't know you could do that. I just know you was telling me to get in the car to go to school. And so like most people, we say, when you walk in the door, this is a different facility. This does not look like your academic classroom. We were pretty structured. Some might say too much, but that's what worked for me. I don't like it when kids say the babies. I needed you to be 18 when you got to that band hall door, and you can walk out the door and be 11 again. But when you're in here, so you will never hear Melodianne say, our babies. No, I might have called them the munchkins or the little kids and the big kids, but I never, ever refer to my middle school kids as babies. Not knocking anyone who does, but that was not in my vernacular or my verbiage. And when I hear it, I go, ugh, okay, stop. I can't. No, if we want them to be able to play big kid music, we got to treat them a little bit like big kids. So an ideal day when the beginners are coming in the room at the first couple of days of school, it's pretty structured, and we do quiet entry. I do not do quiet entry beyond those couple of days. I want them to be excited about coming in the band room. I want my older kids to get in trouble running down the hall because they're getting to the band hall, even though I'll give them a little frown when I see them stop and pause and, run in the door. But at the beginning of the year, we would have one of us, there were two of us. I would have probably Miss Winslow at the door greeting the beginners. I would already be up front. And I think it's extremely important that somebody is up front when they're all coming in the band hall to get their stuff, even if they're distributing to go to different rooms, different areas. Mm-hmm. No, it's okay that they come in crazy. I don't care. I don't care that they're talking and laughing. That does not bother me. The sense of urgency is what we want to see happening. So if they can still tootle along and do their thing, great. But with the beginners, the first couple of days, we would have them sit without skipping any chairs the way they came in the room. That's who they get to sit by that day. And then we would say, look around the room and see who you're sitting by. This is where you're going to sit tomorrow. And you might see a little bit of, no, you'll get over it, child. You're going to get over it. That's where you're going to sit. This is what we do. But beyond beginners, when we go to the big kids, when they come in the room again, I don't get into the quiet entry. I know a lot of people do. I'm not sure I understand why. I think we want our kids to be excited about coming to band. I've seen kids have to shut down completely. And when they shut down completely, they shut down completely in rehearsal too, because it's so. And,
Right.
I learned to teach in an era when people were mean. I mean, that's,
Yeah, I
you were
remember that.
mean.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's just kind of, you gave licks in school. You got to hit kids. You gave them spankings. I mean, I did that, and I look back and go, did I actually do that?
Yeah.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
I was on the receiving end of those
I
few times when
too.
I was at
Me
I
too.
didn't turn in my math homework, so bend
chewing
over.
gum.
Okay.
Chewing gum in the library got you licks
there
when I
you
was in
go.
school. Like, what? I chewed gum and I'm getting hit?
Oh, these days you just
Different times.
you deny
Right.
you had it. You just deny
Right.
you had it. Yeah, and I just go, I know you do, you little rat. That's a non-band kid. That's a non-band kid. But
Funny.
yeah, so getting in the room with a sense of urgency, having everything on the screen or the board back in the day, where our percussionists, you train those percussionists to walk in and look up and see and it's so refreshing. I just love you. You think, getting kind of ready for these questions, I just thought back to all the kids I've taught and how I can just see some of those kids walking in going, oh, get timpani, just doing their stuff. It's just so energetic to watch them go from beginners to 7th and 8th grade.
Right.
And know the things.
Know what to do.
Know the things, yes. And it's just, it was smooth sailing. So I remember how much I just loved my kids at the start of the year. When you go beginner class, big kids, beginners,
Right.
beginners. And you look at those big kids who went, thank you for coming in the room today. No questions. No questions.
Oh, absolutely.
You have to limit the little ones. I'm sorry, did I say little? You have to, the beginners, you've got to just go, nope, you have one question today. And there's a kid I taught who was question boy, and he's like in the Marines now. I'm like, how is this child surviving?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. He was question boy. I went with him up to the high school. He was question boy still. He went, Miss Mallow, are you going to do this forever? Yeah. Yes, because you're still asking me questions.
So
12th grade.
With these being middle school students, how do you get them to stick to routines? What are the strategies that you're embracing so that it's ongoing?
So number one, it's on us. It's on us. So we have to plan and then implement. And if it's a screwy plan, then we've got to just go, okay, I set this in, I put this in front of these kids. We got to figure out a way to make it work. So and this is where I struggle with some of my schools a little bit. And I don't care if they hear this. It's them sticking with a plan, stick with the plan and implement. How are we going to walk in the room? What are we going to do? Do we let them warm up on their own? Yes, I think we should, not beginners. I do have schools that let their beginners do that. I don't think it's right yet. We're not there. We don't know what we're supposed to do yet. Let that be a carrot that dangles big time. But the bigger kids, the performing bands need to do that. So we plan, implement, and then we define and demand. Now, I did hear Amanda, I have to give her credit for that, Amanda Drinkwater, in a clinic, in a book she had read, and that was one of the subtopics was define, demand, and I just latched onto that. Like I told her, I said, I'm stealing this, define, demand. That is excellent verbiage. So whatever we define, whether it's procedural or instructional, we've got to follow through with it. We are the ones to make them go. When we define how we're going to walk in the ring, or if we define how are we going to warm up, what is your warm up procedure? What are the things that are allowed? The opening to Kelly Sundance, Jeremy Spradling, is not allowed on French horn. I mean, but I would go, he kind of sounds good. And I'd have to look over, you don't do that. But I see, I will go off the rafters on this stuff. And then address, assess, however you want to say it. We have to assess things. And when systems are in place in beginner class, your 7th and 8th grade years are freaking-tastic because there's just plans in place. The kids know. Then they go to high school, and they were feeding Bill Watson. No, he said, do not send me babies. Do not send me babies, and do not send me criers. Those were the two things. And Cindy and I were like, no problem. Not going to happen. You're not going to get any criers.
Although he's a softie. When I was teaching with it, oh man, that was great.
We need to have Bill
um,
on.
Oh, man.
We need to have Bill on.
so actually,
Yeah.
I've got a follow up to that, and then changing topics slightly. But
Okay.
for the listeners, if you have a chance to go search Melodianne's ensembles on YouTube or something, just go listen to these groups play.
Well, I don't have anything. I hope they're not out there.
Well, I sure hope that they are for
They're
the
not.
people to listen to, because this stuff is so important, not only for trying to set things up for the future after
Sure.
they are in high school, but for the quality of performance that middle school students can produce and are expected to produce. I think this stuff is so important.
Well,
So-
everybody was good. Everybody was
Yeah.
everybody was around was good. It was keeping up
Which
with
helps.
the Joneses. Oh man,
Mhm.
I was okay with being little fish in a big sea for as long as that needed to happen. That was
Because it
just
helps
fine.
you grow, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's a good thing. So
Yeah.
just to follow up to your other point, it's hard to follow a routine. It's easy to set it up.
Yeah,
It's easy to do it once or twice. It's kind of like a New Year's resolution, right? Like we're all
Right.
going to the gym a lot and trying to eat less carbs or do whatever you do. But so how do you suggest people stick to it?
well, if you see results, you want to do it. And that's also by going and watching other people do their thing. I think you have to go watch other people and go, okay, it's working for them. Why is it not working for me? Do I not have the stick-to-itiveness, or do my kids not have the stick-to-itiveness? Well, when we're talking 11 through 14 years old, they don't care about anything except what they're going to eat for lunch, video games, and whatever. So,
Right.
when people say to me they don't care, I'm like, what did you care about when you were 11? I didn't care about my flute. My dad would say, I hadn't heard that flute in a while. I'm like, yeah. I hadn't heard piano in a while. Yeah.
That's me either, Dad. Me either.
Now, Alan Ash was all I cared about. I mean, boy crazy at that age. That's all I cared about. But when kids can find and see awareness in what you're doing, when I don't think it's a buy-in. I think it's a buy-in when you're new at a school. But when you've established something in beginner classes and they know, okay, do this and she'll shut up. Do this and she'll shut up. I can hear the dinner table conversation of siblings. Just do what she says and shut up and just do it. She'll do it. Just do it. Just do it. If she wants you to have this ready tomorrow,
Right.
have it ready tomorrow. If she wants your practice sheet on Wednesday, turn your practice sheet in on Wednesday. Because I would sit there and you go to the phone and call. I'm about to have to give you a 50 for a stupid reason. And go, what do I tell my parents? I don't know. Tell them it's due tomorrow and minus 10. I don't know. But, we make them grow up. And so after teaching all those brass classes, it's mostly boys, but you just raise those little 7th grade boys, 6th grade boys up to where they become 7th graders that you can tolerate and you can look at and go, I like you now. I did not like you yesterday. I like you now. I like you because you sound good on your instrument. And, kids only act out when they don't know their skill. So if we're lousy teachers, they're gonna be lousy students. So somehow we have to learn to hone our skill. And that only comes through just being efficient and being the expert. And it takes a long time to be the expert. But dadgummit, you've got to be the expert. If you want to play the stuff you want to play in middle school and you want to send those kids to high school with every skill possible, you have to be the expert. Or Bill Watson's going to be a fussy fan.
Yeah. So John has another question for you. Before we get to that one, you mentioned that you don't really necessarily support quiet entry after a first few days. You want to bring them and acclimate them, but then at some point you that changes for you. I'm curious why that is, and why you.
Yeah, I want them to use the skills that we've taught them at that point. So we trained them how to come in the room. Go to the chair you went to. They can be in conversation going to their chair. That's fine. But I want them at some point to be excited about coming in the room. Beginners don't have a lot of skills yet. So the first skill we're teaching them is how to come in the room and sit down and wait for instruction. And not ask questions until we've given all the reasons for them not to. We've already answered that, but we're training them to be able to sit in a performing band someday. So when they come in the room with all those kids that are going to disperse into different classes in about 5 or 10 minutes or in a couple of days, we want them to understand what it's like to sit in a room with 35, 40, 50, some classes at some of the schools I go to. If we put all the classes together, it's like 2 bands.
Right.
They're just so big right now. So that's why I personally don't care for silent entry, because I knew I could train my kids to get to their chair and do the thing.
Sure.
And the tardy bell, like we had a 5-minute passing period. That's not everywhere right now. I see a lot of 3-minute, because they don't have lockers. People don't have lockers anymore. So the kids don't have to stop and go to their lockers. Bizarre. And so we had lockers, obviously, but we weren't a very big school. But I knew that my kids could get their rear end down to the band hall. They could be ready to go. And oh my gosh, these people who do announcements that last forever, it's like pontificate.
The entire Magna Carta. Right.
Oh my gosh. I used to just, at one school, will not say who, I used to walk around and just read the locker names and go, okay, somebody tell me when he's through, when they are through. Because it drove me insane that I would see these kids just not engaged. And it was a good program, but it could be done more efficiently some other way. And they need to know we come in there and we go to work. I don't care what they do in English, math, whatever. They come in the band hall and it is going to be, we learn our skills. We refine our skills. We layer our learning. We do all the things to get you ready for a bigger picture of some sort.
Yeah.
And
so I want to even dive into that just a little bit more. So now they're coming to the room, you train them skills. You just mentioned someone that you've observed just talks a lot at the beginning, announcements and things that are coming up. And I've seen that too. I mean, and I've probably done it sometimes as well.
Again, this is all after I became smarter. Let me preface everything with when I became smarter.
Right. Well, so no, you're seeing it now. So you've seen this, obviously, people doing this. So there must be a routine that you would do differently now.
Yes.
In terms of the beginning. So if obviously we want the students playing as quickly as possible, we want them engaged as quickly as possible.
Yes.
So would you move that area to different part of the rehearsal?
Here's what I did. This is what works for me. I can't tell you it's going to work for everyone else, but I needed, let's say they're already playing, that we instruments, they know to go get their instrument. In fact, the first day that we allowed the beginners to go get their instrument and then come sit down, it's like, some would come sit down and go, it's really okay. You can go get your instrument now. So then it's a new routine. So it's new and they just need to know it's okay. So they let's say they already have their instruments out. We're not in the binder yet, but they already have their instruments out. I do not do announcements. I go right into some sort of instruction. And with my older kids, I did the same thing. The tardy bell rang. They were ready to play, a little bit of concert F. Then I would stop and we would converse. But I needed for them to know, I need this square. I need for you. And it was, again, if they were warming up, that was fine. But I cannot do announcements at the beginning. Sure. I have to do a little bit of playing. And that is, and not waiting on some kid to be ready. No, because we don't do that, because that sounds trashy. And that's not make your neighbor sound good. That is make your neighbor not sound good. So everybody had a sense of urgency. I can honestly say that. The last 15 years of teaching, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure.
That's awesome.
High school was not.
Well, just it seems to me having them immediately engaged is going to focus the room.
Yes. And
so
then,
even if you allow them to come in and converse and stuff, once they hit the seat and your instruction is happening, then they're engaged, they're focused.
It worked for me. Worked for me. And
I think that's great information. Yeah, absolutely.
And it was pretty much like not a lot of verbal communication with the older kids. The little kids, it would be, okay, let's review from yesterday. I immediately would go into something that had to be reviewed to get their brains working big time. Like, let's review what we did yesterday. Raise your hand if you can tell me something. And here's another secret I learned. I did not learn this from anyone in particular. I just figured it out one day. And my best figure out time was driving home from school going, gotta do that better tomorrow. And so I went, why don't I wait for like 8 hands to go up instead of 1? And so I started doing that, and I would go, I wouldn't say anything. I can stand here and be silent for 10 minutes. I know you know the information. Don't be afraid to raise your hand. And then it becomes, oh my gosh, they can't stop. But that takes about a week for them to not be afraid to give an answer if it's wrong. And that is on us for getting them scared to say something. So I had to learn to get out of my first year of teaching, my first 5 years of teaching of don't be mean, don't be mean, don't be mean. Because I admit it. That's what I knew. That's what I knew. And I would get mad when something was wrong, and I would hear it and go, something's wrong. And I would just get mad, but I didn't know the verbiage yet. I didn't have the ensemble skills or the beginner skills to be better at my skill. I was not an expert yet. I was just a mean teacher. Then I became a better expert. I don't know if I'll ever be an expert, but I feel like I became an expert at teaching the instruments, at ensemble technique, at expectations, blah, 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 blah. I just feel like I got better at it. I feel like I got better at it.
It's well said. And it's advice that all of us need to hear.
At any age, at any year,
always.
at any year.
I teach at an institution where it was some people that have come before me were under the
mean?
a little bit of an aggressive approach, like a Toscanini light approach. But I mean, but obviously times are different.
Times do change.
Times change, and so it's impossible.
Yeah.
And it's impossible to put standards today.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Anyway, but so let's transition slightly, because I think this is going to be intuitive, but I just want to hear your thoughts on this. How do these systems support classroom management, and how do they create a positive learning environment for students?
Okay, number one, from that beginner year on, I said if a kid only acts out if they don't know their skill, and so when they are good on their instrument, and you may have good ranging from here to Dallas, maybe your range of good, but some child gets good at something. And I try to let these kids be models on their instrument pretty quickly, because somebody is good at something. And if they're not, we're not doing a good job. So my whole premise behind classroom management is we have to remind our kids that they go home and practice, they're going to be better on their instrument, and they're going to like coming to this class, and they're not going to act out. So again, if a kid is acting out, it tends to be because they don't know their skill very well. Walk in an academic classroom and see body language from kids. When I would have to go in and relieve a teacher to go to the restroom for STAR, I refuse to give the test. Like, fire me. I'm not going to give a test. I'm not giving that STAR test. You can fire me. I'm not. So bathroom duty. I'm your girl. I am your girl. But just to walk in those other classrooms sometimes and go, I'm glad I don't have you. But if I did have you, you would not be sitting like that. I got to where I just didn't have any issues with that because of what our beginner expectations were. Now, there's always going to be something. I did not teach in a utopia. We can all try to have our ivory tower however we want, and we can create that ivory tower. But systems in place will help classroom management not be a thing.
Right.
Like, not a thing. It won't be a thing. And again, that's why I chose not to do silent entry into, again, it wasn't chaotic. It was never chaotic. It was not chaotic.
Right.
But it was an environment where they knew it was different than their academic classroom, and the expectations were higher.
Sure.
So if there is issues with students, and I know there are, I mean, I see it. It's not, it's some of it is school related. Some of it may be atmosphere related. Some of it may be young teacher related. Some of it may be an older teacher who still hasn't figured out, how to engage. So to me, classroom management and teacher engagement go hand in hand. And when they see you as the expert and good at your skill and being able to control a classroom of 65 kids in a band or more, I just think that you create that environment to.
Right.
I don't have a pat answer. I'm sorry.
No, I think you actually nailed it. You said student engagement.
Yes.
Really, that's all
it
boils down to. If the students are engaged, things will be.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different ways to come in engagement, but ultimately, if they're unengaged, then it opens the door for the classroom management problems.
And I have a phrase that I used on myself was work the room like a waitress, find the good, find the bad, but find as much good as possible and go, oh my goodness, look how good they look with their instrument right now. Look at this hand position. You were looking at me the whole time. And the other thing is demand eyes. If you are a 22-year-old first-year teacher, you better be looking at your kids going, I need your eyes. I don't have your eyes. And those little boys are going to do dumb things. They're going to show you their eyes, and you just ignore it. And then it embarrasses them.
Yeah.
Little boys need to be embarrassed sometimes. I'm sorry.
I don't remember who I was watching someone do an honor band, and it was a middle school teacher. I can't remember who it was, but I remember her saying, look at me.
Yes.
Look at me.
Yes.
And she would just say that, and it became so simple. They'd look up.
Yep.
And then information.
It doesn't matter how many times you say it. Yes.
Yeah. And she would stop and look at me and immediately refocus, because when their eyes are there, they're not talking.
Nope.
Like if their eyes are on you, their mouths aren't moving.
No.
And I was blown away. Like, this woman says 3 words and the room is silent.
Because we're about to be the expert.
Exactly.
We are about to be the expert, and we're about to indulge them in information that was given to us to make us smart and to make them sound good. And talking to parents, I got to where I had to be careful talking to parents that way, because no, I'm the expert. You're not.
Right. Yeah.
I do want to emphasize for everybody also, you have to be an expert in a lot of different things, but you have to be a content expert. You have to be an expert on teaching instruments. Period.
Right. Exactly.
You
have to know that there are 9 fingers for the thumb. There are 9 on the bassoon. You have to know all that.
Yeah.
It's critical.
That is all those skills of learning the instruments. I cannot stress enough as to how, when you finally hit the point of teaching those instruments that well, it's you almost want to pat yourself on the back a little bit, but don't, because 10 minutes down the road, somebody's better than you. So don't, but your skill level, we take the business world for granted. There'd be people in the teaching profession right now that would not have a job if they weren't teaching. Sadly, we still have those that just can't figure it out. They love to band, but there's more to it than just loving band. I mean, I am so grateful that I did have those people above me, like Mr. Schraub walking in, you never knowing when he was going to come in. He would start down at the choir room and make his way down to the band room. And then after you got over the initial shock of him in there and standing behind the child that you're like, I know. Then you got, like, when his secretary would call and say, hey, he won't be there today. I'm like, it was my day. I was ready for this.
Right.
I was ready for this today. Yes. In the beginner classes, I didn't mind so much about performing bands, because, we always had high school people there anyway, but you wanted Mr. Schraub to be in those beginner classes to see that you had made improvement,
You'd figured it out.
Yes.
Knowing the instruments and figuring that out early. I remember as a young teacher, I was a trumpet player and I could do brass pretty well. But when it came to my first year, we had 6th grade and like portables.
Yep.
And all the instruments were mixed together. And I had to go in and figure out, Sherry Standards was a teacher in our district.
Right.
And I went to her and was like, okay, what do you do with clarinets? I had 3 clarinets in that class. What do I do? She's like, well, we got these little pinky exercises. You do that one. I had a whole list of exercises.
Right.
And I had to go study.
Yes.
I had to figure stuff out. I'm going to go teach this.
Yes.
I got to figure this out. And then the next year I got assigned an oboe bassoon class.
Right.
This was like, okay. And I took a lot of time, but I had notebooks that I had saved from, college, and, just different resources and watching people. And Jenny Belch was a big resource then. Just hearing her speak was fantastic, because I'm taking in that information. Okay. And I was probably 2 days ahead of the students at that time.
You have to be.
But
you have to be.
That's the only thing I do. I would
It's
go home and study.
Yes.
It's terrifying.
What am I doing tomorrow? I would give them,
it's
okay, I need them to do this tomorrow. And then at the end of that, I need them to have reached this point so I can assign them this thing. And then I got to go figure out that thing.
Yep.
But that is a process of learning those instruments, so that when you're in,
you have to
in the moment, you can, certainly be the expert, which is what you just said. You have to be the expert.
You feel for those people who still have to teach in those situations. And I know that, John, in your neck of the woods, that's a thing.
Many.
Yeah, they don't know this world that we're talking about with, heterogeneous homogeneous classes. And that's a lot. I think I could do it now. I think I could do it now.
I will tell you, for those people that are out there that are in that situation, though, it is doable. And I had to learn very quickly that the method book was irrelevant for the first 6 weeks, probably.
Absolutely.
And I would create little mini exercises for each one of the instruments that I had. And then sometimes it would be like, you play your two measures, you play your two measures.
Yes.
Sometimes I would create them together, like something like the brass could do, and they can do a long tone while you guys are doing little chromatic things.
Yes.
So I did that. I did the little finger exercise that Sherry taught me, like they need to be working on this. Well, my brass can still be doing long tones.
Absolutely.
So you guys are doing this, and I'm teaching them rhythm at the same time.
Yep.
And then there's ways to do it. You have to be creative about it. But I think
Duncanville did it geniusly
exactly
forever.
with those. Yes, and I was in those on those 6th grade campuses. Yeah.
Yep. That's exactly
now, they did finally get that changed, but but if people will just think about the 5 elements of beginner instruction, that's their life. That is their life. And what people don't do well sometimes is sequential teaching and layering. So, we've got posture. That's probably the first thing we talk about. I don't talk about breathing because it's boring. Like, you will never hear me talk about breathing until it's time to actually talk about breathing. And then I'll say, feel the cool spot on the back of your throat. And I know they have to take a big breath to do that. They have to feel the cool spot on the back of the throat. And that's pretty much all Melodianne Mallow ever said about breathing, because I'm not going to bore my kids to death until they're older and they need the actual big time stuff, But if you'll think about posture, counting, note naming, tone and embouchure, and tonguing, those are the 5 elements that we take. And then we have to know how to layer the next thing, and the next thing on top of each of those 5. And anytime I do an in-service or, clinic stuff, which I don't do a lot anymore because just put me in the band room. That's where I like to be. I have to go, okay, what do we do from counting? Okay, they're got to add the foot tap. And people don't do enough foot tap. Their kids don't understand. I'll look around the room and go, this looks like a centipede.
Down, up.
Oh my gosh. If you're not counting off down, up, I play than you. Boom. And you get your kids to say it. Also, okay, who wants to be the down up person today? Go. Okay. And that is why you don't have classroom issues, because you're involving your students. You're making them be the teachers. I used to go, who's going to replace Miss Mallow today? Who's going to be me? And
that's perfect.
Yeah. And, sometimes you'll have a class that doesn't, because you're just still getting there. And by golly, by December, you're like, oh my gosh, we are functioning. We are absolutely, we are functioning. But it took a while. But I said, I want somebody to be me really fast. Who can be me? So
I love that.
Miss Mallow's tired. Who's going to be me today? So.
And I'm sure they all want to do that. That's just,
get to where they do, because they can do something for every kid that is not the best player in the world, or who has got the biggest lips and is on the wrong instrument, whatever. There's something they can do well. Yeah. There is something they can do well. And it is your job to point that out and to make it happen, because we would see it firsthand. When I went from the middle school to the high school, it was my kids. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, here are these kids up here that are juniors and seniors that were functioning. But they weren't maybe the best player in the world, but they were functioning, and they're out there marching a set. And I'm like, what the heck? Okay, this is pretty awesome. I'm glad I didn't give up on this child who I raised. Hands down, we raise them. We raise them. But I guess my word for the year is be the expert. Know your skill, go learn
in
it.
all of it. And there's no way around. I can't emphasize this strongly enough.
Procedurally and instructionally. Those are the 2 things, procedurally and instructionally. Be the expert, define demand, make it happen, plan, implement, address, assess, isolate, fix, whatever you want to call it, but hold your students accountable. But we hold our students accountable by holding ourselves accountable. Okay, can they play G, F, E, D, C on clarinet? And can they make every note sound really, really good? Like I used to tell my kids, you can sound really good on one note. And then we're going to add another one, and we're going to sound really good on that note, and go down the row every day. Oh my gosh, nothing drives me more insane. Well, lots does, but nothing drives me more insane most of the time than when I sit in a beginner class, because in the fall, I'm there all day. I park it at a school all day.
Yeah.
And I just channel Mr. Shroud, Mr. Green, you name it, Bill, everybody, Greg Hull, I channel all those people. And when I see a class go by and not one kid has gone down the row, you haven't heard a kid down the row on something, I will just stop when the period's over and go, you didn't go down the row today. You didn't go down the road today. And they go, oh, I forgot. And I went, how can you forget? And that's early spring. That's early fall when I'm cranky like that, because I'm going, okay, well then when I ask them to do it next month, somebody's going to cry. Then I can't do criers. So you're going to have to fix this. You're going to have to fix this. You've got to hear those kids do something down the road every day so students can be aware of what they're doing well and what they need to work on. And we have to give grades. It's what we do. But as a performing arts class, we're going to continue to do it again until it gets better. And this is where I love rehearsal technique, probably more than anything in the profession.
Sure.
I love learning new pieces. I love tearing them apart. I love taking out slurs. I love taking out ties. I love taking it down to its nakedness and just making them do the things. And, I get a lot of bad feedback from people who don't believe me about taking out slurs for technique. You can put a slur back in. Good gosh. Make them go da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da without a slur. And honey, they're going to be really good technicians at some point.
Well, there's a whole different motor requirement.
Yes.
Articulating and moving fingers together. When the slur, you can kind of get away with it being
trashy.
loose.
No, John, it's trashy. It's trashy. It's trashy and just gets trashier as the tempo gets faster. I'm sorry. So we've got to teach them the ways. And again, as I got smarter and just got, okay, teach this like a private lesson. And people need to realize too, when you're teaching those beginner classes, your class isn't going to move together. Never. Maybe your double reed class. We had a horn cult at North Richland. I could kind of count on that to move together because I might have been a little bit biased with them. They might have been my favorite class, but we wanted in tuba. I wanted horn and tuba factory at North Richland and trumpet most years, but I never got that trombone factory going. But let me tell you, they did not hurt us. But they've got to feel good about what they can do on their instrument for their level.
Right.
And it's up to us to.
Well, okay. So we really are talking now. We've kind of shifted into musical and sort of strong technical abilities.
Yes.
No, it's great. Because routine does matter. We're talking about routines and systems, but if we're talking about making music, there are routines that will increase or decrease sort of the technical proficiency, musical things that occur. So I'm curious, kind of turning that into a question.
Yeah.
Are there routines that you would use to ensure students are building not only strong technical sort of abilities, but also sort of musical foundations that you
Absolutely. So let's say we're tackling a grade 4 in middle school, which that's a big rush to us. For those of us who have been career middle school people, which I consider myself that, minus the 2 years at the high school, for them to reach that level, we have to have things in place that are going to get them to that musical ability to do lots. I'd love for them to listen to recordings of stuff that we're playing. That's nothing new from anyone, but I also want them to hear what our goal is. So if we take out all of the stuff that's on the page, when we put it back in, it's going to be so much better than if we didn't do all of that beforehand. And, like in the beginner book, when slurs are introduced, we would, even if it was slurred, we would play the line first without the slur. And then we would go back and play it again with the slur because I wanted them to hear a drastic difference. And then I could start talking a little bit about style. We could start making them sophisticated. It was very important to me that our students became sophisticated students. Not all of them did, but for the most part, those students who ended up in the varsity band, again, I wanted them to be, very integral about learning their region etudes, how that was going to transfer over to really hard stuff when they're working on all-state music, when we're working on grade 4, when we're playing marches. If you'd just let me play 3 marches for you, I'd have been a happy girl. Like I love all the style concepts involved with marches. I could go teach University of Michigan and do marches. I could
Come on
do
up.
marches. I could just do marches.
Go.
Just let me do them. That's all we listened to growing up was Fennell marches. That's all. It was always University of Michigan. Did I do the right school, or was that Eastman? Where am I? Am I in the wrong place?
Fennell was Eastman.
Okay, so we did those, but we also did. He also made us. Was that Bagan?
Also, Ravelli did.
Ravelli. Sorry. Okay. Yes. We heard a lot of Ravelli and a lot of Ravelli stories. Yeah, you do. You were in a mean background.
Well, I mean,
there it is.
in fairness, I'm kidding. And for anybody listening,
their stories were
different.
Probably,
it was different though. It was different. Not to drag this on, but when I was in high school, there was a window to the band office where the directors were, and when the director stood up to enter the band room, once that door opened, it was silent in the room.
I bet.
Like, we knew he stood up, like we're talking in it.
Boom.
That was it.
Yep.
Entered, band rehearsed for an hour, out. It was a different world.
Yeah.
So, but it's fine. I kind of like the new world. But anyway,
just because we are kind of running short on time, I'm just going to skip ahead, Melodianne, if it's okay. How do these systems play a role in teaching students to take ownership of their practice and their own progress on their instruments?
So we used objective sheets, a la Tom Shine. I really bought into that. And nowadays people have their scale karate, blah, 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 blah. But we used the objective sheet for everything. Number one, it made me plan. It made my coworker plan. It made us plan together for where we wanted them to be at the end of the year. And again, I'm talking beginners kind of at this point. Because if we planned backwards, that helps us. So the objective sheet, you're going to dangle a carrot either extrinsically or intrinsically. And, you want your kids to be that intrinsic child, but those kind of students, it doesn't matter who's in front of them, they're going to learn. So you've got to think about, what are we going to do to reach the middle to the bottom of our classes? They're usually academically a little bit low also. So we've got to help it out there. So the intrinsic stickers or the intrinsic pat on the back, shout out, those kids, they love it. That's all they need. They love homework. So they're all good. Yeah. But, stickers work, candy works, whatever, Smarties, dummies, those little candies. How do you feel today? Go to that bag. But I don't know. I think we're in a world of instant gratification with video games, with the inception of video games a long time ago, which that's a long time ago now. But kids need instant gratification of stuff. So we want to reward them. And you've got to create the stars. So we tried to have a plan in place via stealing stuff from anybody that we could, and to make it tweak and work for us, because I think our personalities also have a big to do with how our students are motivated. Sometimes we have to teach beyond our personality. Sometimes we have to calm our personalities down. I have to get a few people to teach beyond their personality sometimes, because it's boring in their classes. And it's hard to look at someone and go, you bored me today. And you've got to watch their eyes. You've got to watch kids' eyes, and you've got to know when it's time to move on to the next thing. But any reward system that you come up with is wonderful. Whatever works for your students. Sure. But they need to understand that the system, the structure is there for a reason. The structure is there for them to be better on their instrument. And that the neat thing about what we do is they do it again. They do it till we get it better. That's just what we do. And I got smarter about that. You don't just leave a 50 in the grade book. You make it better. You make it better. And I probably would have had to buy into Smart Music and Canvas and all the things now that came about after 2020. I'm still a huge in-person, down the row advocate, because number one, it reflects me and how I'm teaching it, and it reflects me as to how they feel about playing in public and playing by themselves. And that's why in beginner class, I learned just to get that model kid going as soon as they could. Who wants to be the model today on whatever note we're playing, whatever our note is? Model play, and getting them to say out loud, down, up, ready, and play. and we're breathing during all that and the whole
Sure.
9 yards. But man, when you can get them latched onto that, you're not going to have classroom management problems. And and you want to have things on your objective sheet that are easy for the middle of the road kid, yet that star passes it off so fast
Right.
that you've got to have stuff extra. What's next? What's next? What's
Mhm.
next? What's next? We had All-State. He was my Longford Legend saxophone boy, and that's how we all refer to our kids. Whatever piece of music in the middle school world, we don't have a lot, so we don't get to play, really outrageous stuff. So we remember our kids that way. But Ricky was All-State Jazz 2 years in a row when he got to high school. His junior and senior year, his first year, both years, and he's a kid who he was a Pied Piper to everyone else. But there was a lot of times when I would go, Ricky, don't play, because everybody else had to catch up with Ricky. There's times when you want saxophones to not fit into the horns all the time. And so I used to say, saxophones, don't play these 8 measures. This is on the horns. This is on the horns. They have to be the stars right now. So, but you can do that and your kids not be offended. I have to be careful where I say that sometimes, because the kids look at me like, what? Why don't I get to play? You're just not going to play for 2 measures for one day while I'm here.
Yeah.
So
again,
expert.
There's so much good information here that we could go on for hours and hours. I'm just curious, for those individuals that might be struggling establishing effective routines, do you have like 3 top tips you could just give us as hey, here's 3 things. Let's do it.
Yep. Observe. Go wherever you can. You can't take your personal days with you, so just go. And if somebody, if you're not having school one day, you go find out who is not having school. Even if you go somewhere that you don't think is great, you're going to learn something that you're doing better, or you may pick up on something that you could do. So getting out of your classroom is the best thing. Second thing, get a mentor, somebody. Even if it's FaceTime, get someone in your classes, even if it's just another teacher, to watch your classroom management, to see what you're doing, because there's really good academic teachers that have a grip on their skill level, and they're the experts in their field, and they can do that. And then pinpoint what is wrong. What are you allowing? Is it you? Is it the kids? No, it's not the kids. I'm just 9 times out of 10, it's not the kids. It's your engagement or your lack of engagement, and then create your own ivory tower. So there's 4. Because
Perfect. I love it.
Wonderful.
Yep.
All right. So, Melodianne, we ask 2 questions of all of our guests,
So
and I'll
I've heard.
take the first one. So, is there a book or some books that have particularly inspired you throughout your teaching journey?
I'm not a reader, but I love Mr. Green's book by Mary Ellen. Yes, and by the notes that I have just from him. So that's my book. My book. And to read the information that he did in those beginner classes, the whole beginner structure of Mr. Green is what makes me miss him. I miss him in band, but the whole beginner structure and those private teachers going, we don't like what you're doing. He's like, well, then get out here and teach me.
That's funny.
Get out here and teach me. So.
It sounds like the dogs are ready to,
the dogs.
to go on to the next activity. So their timing is perfect. Our last question, which is probably the most important, is what is your favorite time signature?
Okay. 6/8 and cut time. I love me some cut time, and of course, common time.
There you go.
That is awesome.
Melodianne.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Melodianne, thank you so much for being on. We so appreciate your time, and the nuggets that you've given us today are fantastic. It reminds me of stuff when I was doing when I was younger. This down up thing, like no one taught me to do that. I had to have seen someone else do it.
Yeah.
Or what you said about seeing other people. I can't think about. I wouldn't not use that. If I walked into a beginner class, I'm going to say down, up, down,
absolutely,
up, ready, and play.
Yeah.
I would just do it, and it's because I saw someone else. So thanks for your time and being with us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you,
Melodianne. Good to see you.
Awesome.
We'll see y'all later.
We'll see you later. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Common Time Podcast. Don't forget to follow us on social media, and we'd love it if you shared with your friends as well. We'll see you next time, but until then, keep making music and keep making a difference.